Have you ever paused and asked yourself this simple question? If I can hear the voice in my head, then who is listening to it? Who is the one noticing the stream of thoughts that never seems to stop? From the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, a silent narrator seems to speak over everything. It comments, judges, remembers, plans, compares, and worries. But very few people ever stop to notice that they are listening to that voice, not being it. It's like living inside a house with echoing walls and mistaking every sound that bounces off them as your own voice. We live surrounded by noise, yet unaware of the stillness that hears it. That voice you call me has been with you so long, it feels like identity. But is it really? Because if you can observe it, if you can notice the thoughts rising and falling like waves, then there must be a deeper part of you that is separate from the waves entirely. Something that is still while they move, something that watches while they pass. That hidden awareness is the real you. Most people don't realize it because they're too busy reacting to the voice. They never pause long enough to question whose voice it truly is. They accept every sentence, every judgment, every inner narrative as truth. But when you step back and listen without attachment, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to see that not every thought is yours. Not every idea is chosen. In fact, most thoughts are simply echoes from the past, patterns inherited from childhood, fragments absorbed from parents, school, culture, and pain. These voices repeat the same fears, the same doubts, the same criticisms, and we carry them as if they belong to us. But they don't. The voice in your head is not your enemy, and it's not your truth. It's simply a recording, a conditioned response system shaped by years of unconscious experience. And here's the most powerful truth of all. You are not that voice. You are the one hearing it. You are the awareness behind the noise. And once you realize that, you unlock the power to change your life. Because now, for the first time, you can question the thought instead of obeying it. You can observe it without becoming it. And in that space between stimulus and response, a new you begins to awaken. A version of you that is no longer trapped in mental loops. A version of you that can choose. But to reach that state, you must first see the illusion. You must realize that what you've been calling me is often just programming running on autopilot. And that realization begins with a single moment of presence, a breath, a pause, a willingness to witness the mind without getting lost inside it. Because when you stop identifying with every thought that passes through, you begin to hear something deeper, the silence beneath the noise. And in that silence lives your freedom. This is the first step toward becoming the inner observer, not by fighting the mind, but by noticing it without judgment. Just like clouds drifting across the sky, your thoughts are not who you are. They are passing phenomena within your awareness. So the next time a thought arises, try asking quietly, who is noticing this? And listen, not with the ears, but with the stillness within. That stillness is you, and it's been waiting for you to remember. Now that you've begun to step back from the voice, let's take a closer look at where that voice came from. What if the thoughts that dominate your mind were never really yours to begin with? What if the thoughts you think every day are not even yours to begin with? What if the inner commentary that loops inside your mind is nothing more than an inherited program playing itself on repeat? Studies show that over 80% of the thoughts we think today are the same as those we thought yesterday. And most of them are unconscious, meaning they arise without intention, without awareness, and without question. But if you pause to examine where these thoughts come from, something surprising begins to unfold. You'll find the fingerprints of your past all over them. The voice that tells you you're not enough may not be your voice at all. It may be the echo of a parent who once criticized you, a teacher who dismissed you, or a culture that conditioned you to believe you had to earn love, success, or self-worth. When a child hears something painful repeatedly, they don't just remember it, they internalize it. It becomes a background narrative, a mental whisper that grows louder with time until it feels like truth. But truth is not repetition. Truth is awareness. And when you start becoming aware of these patterns, you begin to realize how many of your thoughts are recycled beliefs, collected from experiences, wounds, and the people who came before you. You think you're thinking, but often you're just repeating. You think you're deciding, but you're following scripts written long ago. This isn't your fault. It's how the unconscious mind protects itself, by automating behavior, by reinforcing the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. But the moment you shine light on the source of your thoughts, you loosen their grip. You reclaim the space between stimulus and response. Imagine this. Someone goes through life believing they're not good enough, and that belief keeps shaping every choice they make. But have they ever stopped to ask, where did that voice come from? Maybe it started with a single comment in childhood, something someone said without thinking, but it landed like a seed. And that seed became a sentence. That sentence became a belief, and that belief became their identity. But here's the truth. You are not the sentence. You are not the belief. You are not the programming. You are the field in which it all arises. And as the field, you have the power to rewrite the code. The first step is recognition. Begin to notice the voice without assuming it's right. Ask questions like, who said this to me first? Do I even agree with it now? Is this thought serving me or keeping me stuck? When you become curious, you stop being controlled. And curiosity is the gateway to freedom. Just like a computer runs software, until someone updates the code, your mind runs old thoughts until you bring awareness to them. That awareness is the update. It's the shift from automatic to intentional. And from that shift, a new version of you can emerge. One that sees the thought, questions the thought, and chooses whether to keep it. Not all thoughts deserve to stay. Some are expired programs still running in the background, draining your energy and shaping your identity without your permission. You can release them, not by force, but by presence, by noticing, by becoming the observer instead of the believer. And the more you practice this, the more you discover that your mind is not a master to obey, but a tool to train. You are not your programming, you are the rewriter of it. And each time you notice an old loop, you are given a choice to repeat it or to rise above it. That's how transformation begins. Not by adding more thoughts, but by choosing new ones. So let's take this further. If you are not your thoughts, and those thoughts were programmed into you, then who are you beneath the programs? What remains when the noise fades and the story pauses? In the next part, we'll explore how stepping into this observer role not only reveals your true self, but also gives you access to an entirely new version of reality. And then something profound happens. The moment you pause and see the thought instead of being pulled into it, a space opens. That space is not empty. It's full of potential. It's the first glimpse of freedom. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to observe intentionally. Instead of drowning in the mental storm, you realize you are the sky behind it. The thought becomes like a passing cloud, temporary, shifting, not who you are. And in that, awareness, something ancient and powerful within you wakes up. This is not about controlling your mind. It's about realizing you are not the mind. You are the presence that sees it. You are the silent field of awareness in which the entire play of thought, emotion, memory, and reaction unfolds. And this is the moment your true power begins. Because the instant you recognize yourself as the witness, not the voice, not the programming, not the story, you unlock choice. Real choice. conscious choice. You are no longer at the mercy of old loops. You are no longer living by reflex. You are no longer hypnotized by the internal narrator. You see clearly now. There is a part of you that has never changed. It was there before the thought appeared, and it remains after the thought dissolves. That is who you are. And from that space, you don't have to fight your mind. You just let it pass through. Like watching ripples on a pond or leaves drifting down a stream, the thoughts come and go, but you stay rooted in awareness. No longer swept up by every story. No longer tangled in every emotion. No longer believing that every thought is your identity. You begin to notice patterns you never saw before. The inner critic loses volume. The anxiety loses its grip. The doubt starts to dissolve. Not because it was conquered, but because it was witnessed. Witnessing is not passive. It is the most transformative act you can perform. It is the light that dissolves illusion. The more you practice being the observer, the stronger that awareness becomes. You begin to respond instead of react. You pause before speaking. You breathe before judging. You sense before deciding. And in that pause, you meet yourself. Not the conditioned self, not the persona shaped by years of noise, but the authentic self, the aware presence, the conscious witness. You no longer ask, "What should I think?" You ask, "What do I truly see?" And in that seeing, you return home to yourself. The world outside may still be loud, but your center is quiet. The chaos may swirl, but your presence stays still. This is the shift from unconscious living to conscious being. And the more you lean into this space, the more you realize how much life energy was trapped in reaction. How much of your peace was sacrificed to thought. But now you are reclaiming it. One moment at a time, one breath at a time. You no longer chase every feeling. You no longer resist every thought. You simply observe. And in that simple act, everything begins to change. Your frequency rises. Your clarity sharpens. Your choices align. Because you're not lost inside the noise. You're standing in the silence that sees it all. And that silence is not empty. It's alive. It's intelligent. It's the source of your true power. So the next time the thought arises, remember this. You do not have to follow it. You do not have to believe it. You do not have to become it. You can simply notice it, acknowledge it, and return to the witness. That is your home. That is your truth. You are not the thought. You are the awareness behind it. And that changes everything. Now let's go deeper. Because once you awaken the inner observer, the question becomes, what do I do with it? How can I use this awareness to rewrite my relationship with emotion, reality, and identity itself? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next part as we begin stepping into the powerful space of conscious transformation. Meta-Cognition is one of the most powerful tools of consciousness you are never taught to use. It's the ability to think about your thoughts, to observe your own mental activity like a witness rather than a participant. Most people live there, lives submerged in their thoughts, assuming every voice in their mind is them. Every opinion is true. Every emotion is justified simply because it's felt. But here's the game changer. Once you activate the second layer of awareness, you realize you've been sitting in the river, assuming you were the water, when in fact, you've always had the capacity to step onto the bank and watch the current flow. Imagine your thoughts as a stream and your consciousness as the silent observer standing at the edge. The water continues to move, but you are no longer drowning in it. You are simply watching, noticing, allowing. This shift may sound subtle, but its impact is massive. You go from being the actor stuck in a script to the director who can rewrite the story. The difference is profound. When you become aware that you're thinking, rather than unconsciously thinking, you create a space between stimulus and response. And in that space lives freedom, true freedom. Neuroscience supports this. Studies show that when individuals practice observing their thoughts, specific regions of the brain associated with executive function and self-awareness become more active. This includes the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and intentional behavior. What this means is, the more you observe your thoughts, the more conscious you become, and the more conscious you become, the more you can reshape the patterns that have been running your life. Meta-Cognition is the key to identifying the scripts you didn't choose but have been acting out for years. It helps you recognize which thoughts are simply echoes of the past, handed down through conditioning, trauma, culture, and repetition. It helps you spot beliefs that are not aligned with your truth but have been accepted as fact simply because they've been repeated so often. Thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "I'll never succeed," or "people like me don't do that," are not who you are. They are not sacred. They are not truth. They are just loops. And when you observe them from the second layer of consciousness, you stop feeding them. You weaken their hold. You reclaim your mind. This is why metacognition is not just a mental concept, but a spiritual one. It is the act of returning to the seat of awareness, the still center behind the chaos. It aligns beautifully with practices like mindfulness, where the core principle is to observe without judgment. In that observation lies transformation. You're not trying to stop the thoughts. You're not trying to control the mind. You're simply stepping back and seeing it clearly. That alone shifts everything. When you watch the mind with neutrality, its grip begins to loosen. The noise quiets. The space opens. And within that space, you start to hear the deeper voice, the one that has always been there underneath the chatter. That voice is not loud. It doesn't argue or demand. It whispers truth. Metacognition helps you tune into it by removing the static of reactive thinking. And the more you do it, the stronger it gets. At first, this second layer may feel distant or even abstract, but with practice, it becomes your home base. The thoughts still arise, but you're no longer enslaved by them. You can notice without reacting, observe without identifying, and even smile at the absurdity of some of the patterns you used to call reality. Metacognition is the gateway to mental sovereignty. It is how you reclaim your authority over your inner world. You stop being at the mercy of inherited thinking and start becoming the conscious author of your experience. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to do anything extra to find this layer. You're already aware. You're already observing. You just haven't realized the power of that awareness yet. And once you do, you'll never see your mind the same way again. This is not about perfection. It's about awareness. Not about controlling the river, but about remembering you're not the river. You're the one who sees it. And once you know that, you can begin to navigate life with a clarity and presence that few ever access. This is the shift from unconscious programming to conscious creation. This is where everything begins to change. Because when you understand the mind, you stop being its prisoner. And when you witness the thought, you realize you're the one holding the light. Now that you've discovered the second layer of consciousness, it's time to experience it. Because awareness without practice is just information, but awareness in action becomes transformation. So let's begin something deceptively simple, yet deeply powerful. Right now, take a breath, then another. Gently close your eyes if you're not driving or distracted. For the next moment, don't try to do anything special. Just sit, breathe naturally, and become the observer of your inner world. Don't try to empty your mind. Don't try to stop thoughts. Instead, notice them. Watch them rise and fall like waves on the surface of the ocean. Some thoughts may be loud, others faint. Some may carry emotion, others may feel random. Let them all pass. Your only task is to see without grabbing, witness without pushing, be the silent watcher, and notice, are you the thought or the space it moves through? Are you the story or the still presence behind it? For just 1 minute each day, this simple act creates profound change. It rewires your nervous system to respond instead of react. It teaches your brain to locate safety and stillness. It reintroduces you to your natural state awareness without attachment. At first, you may notice just how noisy your mind is. Thoughts dart from one topic to another. Judgments arise. Memories surface. Plans interfere. This is completely normal. This is the mind doing what it has always done. The difference now is, you're watching. You're not caught inside the storyline. You're in the seat of clarity. Over time, with even a minute of consistent practice, you'll begin to detect something most people never notice: the space between thoughts. That subtle pause where no words exist, no movement stirs, just pure awareness. In that space lies your power. In that space, nothing controls you. In that space, your freedom begins. This is not a trick. It's not a performance. It's not even meditation in the traditional sense. It's remembrance. You are remembering that you are not your mind. You are the one who sees the mind. And when you see it, you stop being ruled by it. Most people go their entire lives reacting to thoughts they never chose, running patterns they never questioned. But the moment you realize your thinking is the moment you stop being controlled by the thinking. You reclaim authority. You step into authorship. You no longer need to believe every voice that speaks in your head. You can listen, but you don't need to obey. You can witness, but you don't need to participate. That's the secret. That's the art of freedom. And this freedom doesn't come from efforting. It comes from noticing. That's all. And noticing begins with just 1 minute of stillness a day. You can do it right before bed, in the car, on a walk, between meetings, before a conversation. You pause, you watch, you witness, and in doing so, you dissolve the illusion that you are the voice inside. You become something deeper, something older, something quieter. You become the awareness. And awareness is immune to fear because it doesn't resist what arises. It simply observes neutrally, compassionately, silently. So begin here. Make space for 1 minute of presence today, and let that be the crack where light enters. Let that moment remind you that you are more than the chatter, more than the loop, more than the past. And as this practice becomes familiar, so does your power. Because now you've seen the mind from the outside. You've tasted the space behind it. And this is only the beginning. In the next step of your journey, we'll explore how to hold that same awareness, not just when sitting still, but when emotions rise, when challenges come, when real life asks you to act. Because true power is not about controlling every thought that enters. It's about mastering how you respond to it. That's where transformation truly begins. And in the next part, you'll learn exactly how to anchor that power in your daily experience. The moment you began witnessing your thoughts, you cracked open a door that very few ever notice exists. But now that you've seen that you are not the mind, the next revelation awaits. Every thought you allow to repeat does not just echo in your head, it embeds itself in your nervous system, shaping your beliefs, guiding your choices, and eventually scripting your life. Thought is not harmless noise. Thought is the seed. Belief is the root. Behavior is the fruit. And your reality is the orchard that keeps growing from what you keep planting. Thought leads to belief. Belief generates emotion. That emotion drives your actions. Your actions shape your experience. And your experiences become the proof that the belief was true all along. This is the hidden cycle that keeps your life looping the same patterns in different disguises. Most people are stuck not because they are unwilling to change, but because they are unaware of the script running them. Imagine someone who once felt unworthy after being rejected. That one experience, when replayed enough times in their mind, becomes a thought they believe. I am not good enough. That belief then triggers a deep emotional reaction whenever connection is available. They might pull back, become guarded, or sabotage intimacy, unconsciously fulfilling the prophecy that they are unworthy of love. And each time it happens, it feels like reality is confirming the belief, when in truth, the belief created the behavior that created the experience. This is not a flaw. It is how human consciousness was designed. But here is the secret. What was built can be rebuilt. What was repeated can be interrupted. What was programmed can be reprogrammed. But none of that can begin unless you first see the loop. And that requires attention, stillness, the willingness to step back and ask, where did this voice come from? Because most thoughts were never yours to begin with. They came from parents, teachers, culture, trauma, repetition. And like a catchy song on repeat, they've become familiar but not true. To awaken is to begin watching the loop without judgment, just like a scientist watching an old machine play its code. Only then can you start choosing new inputs. Only then can a different life begin to unfold. The greatest power you hold is not in resisting the thought, but in realizing that it is optional. Just because it arises does not mean it must rule you. And once you truly see the script, you are no longer trapped inside its plot. You are holding the pen, and now you get to write again. In the next segment, we will go deeper into the roots of that programming. You'll discover that many of your reactions are not responses to this moment, but echoes of the past. And when you start recognizing that difference, you reclaim the power to choose not from fear or history, but from clarity and presence. Let's move forward. Once you begin to witness the loop, a deeper truth begins to surface. Most of what you call your reaction is not a response to the present, but an echo from the past. Like wearing a pair of tinted glasses, shaped by old pain, early programming, and forgotten moments. You are looking at now through the lens of then. And the problem is not the lens. The problem is forgetting that you're wearing it. Someone criticizes you, and your chest tightens. Not because their words are sharp, but because somewhere in your past, criticism felt like danger. Someone disagrees with you, and you feel attacked. Not because their perspective threatens you, but because long ago, being wrong meant being unloved or punished. These responses are real, but they are not always about reality. They are stored reactions, like pre-written code firing in your nervous system. Every time you are triggered, it is not the world pulling your strings. It is your old file system being opened again, as if your body remembers what your mind forgot. And so, instead of seeing what is actually here, you project what was always there. The wounded child, the ignored teenager, the silenced dreamer. They are still speaking through your reactions, asking to be seen. And until you see them, they will continue choosing for you, even if you think you are the one deciding. But here is the light breaking through the cracks. When you observe the pattern in motion, you create space between stimulus and response. You give yourself a breath. In that breath, you can choose differently. You realize that the voice saying, "I'm not good enough," is not speaking truth. It is speaking memory. That tightening in your chest is not always a sign to fight or flee. It is often just the residue of an old wound asking not to be reopened. And with practice, you stop reacting blindly. You start responding consciously. You stop needing to defend a version of you that is no longer here. And that, right there, is how the past begins to lose its grip. You no longer let it shape your now. You are no longer its puppet. You are the presence that sees it. And that presence is power. This is the subtle miracle of awareness. It doesn't always change the outer world instantly, but it shifts the inner climate. And when your inner atmosphere changes, everything begins to rearrange. Not because the world is different, but because you are no longer meeting it from old eyes. You are showing up from this moment with clarity, with breath, with choice. And that is the beginning of freedom. But how do you train yourself to live from that place more often? How do you build the inner muscle of observation so it becomes second nature rather than just an occasional insight? In the next segment, we will explore the key that unlocks this transformation, the power of observation itself, not just as a concept, but as a living, breathing practice. Let's continue. Once you begin to see the pattern, truly see it, something powerful happens. You stop becoming it. This is the quiet revolution of observation. Not aggressive, not loud, but deeply transformative. When a thought arises, and instead of reacting, you simply notice, you create a space. That space is awareness. And awareness is the birthplace of all choice. In that sacred gap between trigger and reaction, you meet yourself as the observer, not the actor trapped inside the script. That script may still run in the background. It may still whisper the old lines, echo the past roles. But now you are watching, and the watcher is never the story. The moment you observe, the code begins to lose its grip, not because you force it, not because you suppress it, but because you're no longer feeding it with unconscious agreement. You are no longer dancing blindly with it in the dark. Imagine a child yelling out in pain, shouting words like, "I hate you," or "Leave me alone." You don't argue with the words. You understand the emotion behind them. You see it for what it is, a wave passing through, not a truth to be feared. Your thoughts are the same. They are echoes. They are expressions of energy. They are not final judgments or absolute truths. They are just movement within the mind. And when you stop identifying with every movement, you begin to float above the storm. You stop being tossed by the waves and become the sky that holds them. This is the essence of inner freedom. You don't have to fix every thought. You don't have to wrestle with every belief. You just have to become aware of them. And in that awareness, they begin to shift. Like fog under sunlight, they start to dissolve, not through force, but through clarity. You begin to remember that you have always been more than the programming, more than the habits, more than the patterns passed down through time. You are the field in which all of this occurs. And in that remembrance, the old scripts lose their power. They might still appear, but they no longer dictate. They no longer define. Because you are writing a new story now, one observation at a time. You are no longer reacting from old pain. You are responding from present clarity. And that shift, subtle, yet profound, is the doorway to an entirely new frequency. Because here's the truth most never hear. You don't have to fight the programming to be free of it. You just have to witness it without feeding it. You just have to stop becoming it. And when you do, everything starts to recalibrate. The vibration of your mind, the energy in your body, the field of your life, all begin to shift. And in the next part, we'll explore how this observation connects directly to frequency, how where you place your focus determines the signal you emit, because your attention is not just passive. It's powerful. It's tuning the channel of your entire reality. And the observer is holding the dial. When you say something like, "I'm not good enough," or "I'm just an angry person," you're not stating a fact. You're reinforcing a lens. Identity is not a label glued to your soul. It's a perspective that shapes how you see yourself and respond to the world. Most of us carry labels we never consciously chose. Somewhere in the past, someone said you were too loud or too quiet, too sensitive or not enough. and that voice embedded itself into your inner narration. From that moment on, you didn't just think those thoughts, you became them. But what if those labels were never truly yours to begin with? What if they were just echoes from someone else's fear or projections from their pain? When you wear a lens long enough, it begins to feel like your eyes. But the truth is, you are not the label. You are the one who sees the label. The power to shift your life lies in shifting your lens. Because whatever you observe repeatedly, you begin to embody. That's how identity works. It's not a fixed truth. It's a story being told through your focus, your attention, and your internal language. The phrase, "I am," is not a description, it's a creation. When you say, "I am a failure," you're not reporting what's happening. You're defining who you allow yourself to be. But when you shift the language to, "I'm noticing a feeling of failure right now," everything changes. Now you are not the feeling. You are the observer of the feeling. This subtle shift creates space, and in that space, a new version of you becomes possible. Your old identity may have been built from reactions, defenses, and patterns of survival. But the new identity you choose can be built from awareness, choice, and higher frequency. You are not locked into your past self, unless you keep looking through the same mental lens. Let's be clear. You are not the story that plays in your head. You are the storyteller. And just like a director behind the camera, you can change the scene by changing the script. If your mind says, "I'm always anxious," the observer inside you can say, "I'm watching my mind project anxiety right now." One sees from the identity. The other sees the identity. That distinction is what creates freedom. So the next time you catch yourself repeating an old label, pause. Ask yourself, what lens am I using right now? And who would I be if I took it off? You might find that behind the fog of old stories is a clearer truth waiting to be chosen. When you shift the lens, you shift the life it creates. And that's not just poetic, it's quantum. Because in the quantum world, what you observe becomes real. And in your inner world, what you observe repeatedly becomes you. So let's not just be the product of old definitions. Let's become the conscious chooser of new possibilities. Because the lens you choose today becomes the life you live tomorrow. Once you understand that identity is a lens, the next step is realizing you can consciously shift it. And the simplest way to begin that shift is through language. Instead of saying, "I'm angry," try saying, "I notice anger rising in me." That tiny shift creates distance. And that distance is where your power begins. Because once there is space between you and the emotion no longer defines you. It simply becomes something you're aware of, something passing through your field, not something that owns you. You don't liberate yourself by denying your emotions. You liberate yourself by changing your position in relation to them. When you stop sitting inside the storm and instead observe it from the hilltop, your entire nervous system begins to shift. You move from reactivity to response, from being the emotion to being the awareness holding space for the emotion. That is not suppression. That is transformation. And it happens in the moment you say, "I see it," rather than "I am it." Each time you choose that observer stance, you're not just watching a thought or feeling, you're stepping onto a different timeline. One where the version of you is not trapped in loops, but actively choosing your way forward. This is how identity changes, not through force, not through pretending, but through observation, through seeing clearly. Every "I am" statement reinforces a script, but every "I'm noticing" statement opens up a rewrite. It's subtle, but powerful. When you say, "I'm broken," your nervous system accepts that as truth. But when you say, "I'm observing pain," you're honoring the experience without becoming it. That shift alone can change your entire trajectory, because your attention is not just a spotlight, It's a steering wheel. Where you place it determines the direction your consciousness travels. The more you observe from this higher place, the more you align with the self that is free, empowered, and whole. That version of you is not far away. It's already within. You reach it not by becoming someone else, but by letting go of the lens that says you're only this or only that. One powerful daily practice is to start rewriting your internal language. Instead of, I'm anxious, try, there's anxiety present, and I'm noticing it. Instead of, I'm stuck, try, I'm experiencing a moment of uncertainty, and I'm observing how it feels. This is called observer statement practice. It trains your brain to create space. It dissolves identification, and it reconnects you with the deeper self that's always been watching. The more you practice this, the more you choose timelines where your potential can actually emerge. You stop repeating the past and start responding from presence. And in that presence, a new identity begins to take form. Not one that was imposed, one that is consciously chosen, one that feels aligned with who you really are. So remember this, you are not your story. You're the storyteller. And the moment you see that, the script begins to change. And so does everything that follows. There's a moment that most people never notice. It happens so quickly, so subtly, that it vanishes before it can be grasped. But within that moment lives your greatest power. It is the space between stimulus and response, the gap between trigger and reaction. Most people live on autopilot, pulled and pushed by emotions, repeating patterns they never chose. Someone says something sharp, and your body tightens. A delay happens in your day, and irritation rushes in. But what if you could pause, not to escape life, but to see it more clearly? This is the essence of the observer pause, a simple yet profound technique that interrupts unconscious loops and opens a portal to choice. Imagine you're watching a train speeding down a track, and every thought, every emotion, every reaction is a carriage linked to the one before. Now imagine that you suddenly step off the train and onto the platform. For the first time, you're not in the ride. You're watching it. That is the pause. Just 3 seconds. That's all it takes to shift from programmed reaction to conscious awareness. When you feel anger rising, you pause. When fear grips your chest, you pause. When judgment wants to leap from your lips, you pause. You take a breath, and you remember, I am not this reaction. I am the one who sees it. And in that breath, something powerful unfolds. You've interrupted the script. The loop didn't get to finish itself. The pattern cracked, just enough for light to enter. Because here's the truth. Your reactions are not really about the moment you're in. They are echoes from the past, scripts written in childhood, impressions carved by pain, expectations handed to you without consent. But when you pause, you break the chain. You are no longer a puppet of your programming. You are the conductor of your frequency. You decide where your energy flows. You decide who you are becoming. This is not about suppression. You're not ignoring the emotion. You're witnessing it, and witnessing is transformation. You're not denying the fire. You're becoming the space around it. This pause is not weakness. It is precision. It is awareness sharpening like a blade. It is choosing alignment over impulse. And it only takes 3 seconds. 1. Breath in. 2. Who is observing this? 3. I am here. Not the reaction. Not the story. Not the echo. Just presence. And from presence, you hold the pen again. You're no longer living the old story. You're writing a new one, moment by moment, with the power of your attention. In those 3 seconds, your entire nervous system begins to rewire. You start creating new neural pathways, new timelines, new possibilities. This is how the quantum observer is trained, not through force, but through repetition of presence. Each pause becomes a signal to your mind that you are no longer trapped in the cage of reactivity. You are free to choose. And every choice is a vote for a higher self. Every time you pause instead of explode, breathe instead of retreat, witness instead of judge, you align with the version of you that no longer lives on autopilot. You become conscious in the places you used to be asleep. This is how power returns to you, not in grand gestures, but in small inner victories repeated until they shape your identity. So the next time a trigger rises, remember this. You have 3 seconds. 3 seconds to step back, to witness, to choose again. That space is your liberation. That space is where healing begins. That space is where you remember, I am not the storm. I am the sky holding it. In the next segment, we'll break this practice down into simple steps so you can begin using the observer pause today, right where you are, no matter what shows up. Now that you've glimpsed the power that lives inside the pause, let's bring that awareness into your everyday reality with a simple, repeatable method. This is where philosophy becomes practice. This is where ideas begin to rewire your nervous system. The 3-second observer pause is not just a concept. It is a doorway. It is a discipline that reshapes your inner world one breath at a time. Here's how you do it. Step 1. When you feel a strong emotion rising, anger, fear, sadness, guilt, anxiety, pause. Right there. Don't speak. Don't act. Just stop. Freeze the frame. Interrupt the loop. Give yourself 3 sacred seconds. Step 2. Inhale deeply. Let this breath expand your inner space. Then ask a question, silently and clearly. Who is watching this? Who is witnessing this surge? Who is noticing this fear or this tension or this reaction trying to rise? That question is not just mental. It opens a portal. Because when you ask who is watching, something extraordinary happens. You create distance. You no longer are the feeling. You are the space in which the feeling appears. Step 3. Realize this fundamental truth. If you can see the emotion, then you cannot be it. If you are watching the storm, you are not inside it. That moment of recognition is subtle but seismic. It is the beginning of your freedom. It is the moment your awareness unhooks itself from the program. And in that unhooking, your vibration begins to rise. You're no longer trapped in the chemical loop of reaction. You are witnessing from a higher mind. Imagine standing beside a river, watching waves rush by. The emotions are those waves, but you are not the water. You are the silent one on the shore. You're not drowning anymore. You're observing the current. And from that place, the energy shifts. You may still feel the sensation in your body, but it no longer controls your voice, your thoughts, your choices. You've taken the wheel back. The practice is simple, but don't underestimate its power. One moment of conscious observation can undo hours of unconscious reactivity. One pause can change how you treat someone you love. One breath can prevent a decision you'll regret. And the beauty is, it only takes 3 seconds. You don't need a silent room. You don't need a retreat. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to remember, right in the middle of the trigger, to pause and witness. This is the practice that turns ordinary people into conscious creators. This is how leaders are born. This is how trauma begins to lose its grip. This is how you stop being a victim of your programming and start becoming the author of your presence. Because in that breath, when you say, I see you, emotion, but I am not you, you become the observer, not with force, but with stillness. Not by controlling the emotion, but by no longer becoming it. And the more you practice this, the faster your nervous system recalibrates to a new baseline. You don't just react less. You feel lighter. You feel clearer. Your choices begin to align with the self you actually want to live as. The 3-second pause becomes a sacred anchor in the chaos, a compass pointing you back to your truth, a muscle that grows stronger with every use. And here's the real miracle. The more you practice this presence, the less life feels like it's happening to you. The more you realize it's responding to you. Because presence is not passive, it's generative, it's magnetic. And the world you create from that space is not a reaction to your past. It's a reflection of your awareness. In the next segment, we'll take this practice even deeper. You'll be guided into a short meditation designed to anchor this observer state into your body and mind, so that with each breath, it becomes less of a technique and more of who you are. Now that you've felt the space between reaction and choice, let's take it one step deeper. Let's move from theory into direct experience. Because the inner observer isn't just an idea. It's a presence that can be felt, trained, and anchored. This is your moment to pause not just in mind, but in body. So if you can, close your eyes gently. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Let your chest rise. Let your belly soften. Exhale through the mouth. Let your shoulders drop. Let your body begin to melt into stillness. And now, simply observe. Don't try to quiet the thoughts. Don't chase them away. Just notice them. Like clouds floating through a vast sky, maybe there's a memory, maybe a worry, maybe a desire. Whatever comes, allow it to be there. And as it moves through your awareness, repeat silently within, I see this, but I am not this. I feel this, but I am more than this. Let the breath flow naturally. No force, no judgment, just observation. If a strong emotion comes up, place gentle attention on it, not to fix it, but to witness it. Because in witnessing, the charge begins to dissolve. And in its place, space arises. The space of presence, the space of clarity. You are no longer reacting. You are resting in awareness itself, even if just for a moment, even if thoughts continue. You are the sky, not the weather. Let yourself float here for just a little longer, breathing, watching, being. Notice what shifts when you do nothing but observe. Notice the subtle release, the drop in tension, the sense that you're no longer caught in the storm. You are the one watching the waves. This is the observer state, not as a theory, but as a felt experience in your nervous system. You may find this feels unfamiliar. That's okay. This is a new pattern forming, a new muscle awakening. And like any muscle, it gets stronger with repetition. Just 1 minute like this each day can rewire your entire baseline. You begin to live less from reaction and more from intention, less from programming and more from presence. So as this meditation comes to a close, keep your eyes soft. Gently open them if you'd like, or stay inward a moment longer. But know this, what you just practiced may seem small, but the impact is not. That pause is the shift. That breath is the break in the code. That quiet is where your true power begins to speak. And as you return to your day, remember this feeling. You can come back to it at any time. In the middle of a conversation, in traffic, in conflict, in doubt. You don't need perfect silence to find this state. You just need a pause. You just need a breath. And in that breath, you reclaim your frequency. You restore your alignment. Because in the space of the observer, reality begins to reorganize, not from effort, but from clarity. And now, as we transition into the final chapter of this journey, we move from observation into embodiment. Because it's not enough to glimpse this truth. You must live it. Practice is the bridge between knowing and becoming. And the next part will guide you to embody this observer mindset until it becomes your natural state of being. Because the more often you pause, the more easily you stay awake. And the more you stay awake, the more powerful your presence becomes. This small pause creates a massive shift. You're no longer reacting, you're creating. And from here, embodiment begins. Awareness isn't a moment you visit, it's a space you live in. And like any sacred space, it must be kept alive through gentle attention and daily return. Most people think awakening is a one-time breakthrough, a lightning strike of clarity, a sudden shift that changes everything. But in truth, awakening is not the spark. It's the decision to keep the flame burning, especially when the winds of emotion try to blow it out. In the beginning, you will forget. You will get pulled back into old patterns. You will catch yourself reacting without pausing, speaking without sensing, moving without meaning. That's not failure. That's conditioning unraveling. You might wonder if you're doing it right. You might feel impatient, hoping for instant peace or proof that it's working. But just like a seed planted beneath the soil, growth begins in silence, out of sight, in moments where it feels like nothing is happening. These are the moments where your observer is quietly growing stronger. To support this inner shift, use anchors that bring you back. A bracelet on your wrist can remind you to breathe before reacting. A single word, written on a card or whispered in thought, can bring you back to presence. These are your quantum cues, gentle nudges back to the now. Keep a journal nearby, and at the end of each day, write down one moment where you noticed yourself instead of losing yourself. Maybe it was when you heard the voice of anger rise, but you paused. Maybe it was when fear knocked, and you saw it before it took the driver's seat. These tiny recognitions build neural pathways of awareness. They change the very way your brain filters experience. Each morning, even for just 3 minutes, sit in silence. Feel your breath. Welcome the day not as the old you, but as the witness of what arises. You don't have to force stillness. Just watch. Just breathe. Let that sacred pause become the foundation of your day. The observer isn't who you become when everything is calm. The observer is who you remain when the storm hits. When the email arrives, the voice criticizes, the trigger fires, the old story returns, and yet you stay. Not inside the chaos, but just beside it. That is power. Not the power to dominate or control, but the power to choose presence in the face of programming. Over time, this choice becomes your new normal. No longer a glimpse, but a lifestyle. No longer something you do, but someone you are. The one who watches. The one who breathes. The one who sees without judgment, feels without drowning, speaks without performing. In this space, a new identity forms, not from what you fix or chase, but from what you simply observe and allow to pass. Let that be your rhythm. Let that be your path. And as we move into the final part, you'll discover how this path doesn't just change your mind. It shifts your frequency. It reshapes the reality around you. Because when you live from the observer, quantum change is no longer a possibility. It becomes your embodiment. Every small shift in awareness is a quantum shift in frequency. And while the change may not announce itself with fireworks, it echoes in the invisible layers of your life. One moment of stillness where you pause instead of react is not just a break in behavior. It's a signal to the universe that you are no longer run by your old coding. One breath taken in awareness instead of tension is an invitation to higher guidance. One written reflection instead of suppressed emotion is a declaration that your identity is evolving. This is the work. Not massive, dramatic gestures that burn out in days, but the gentle, intentional noticing that rewires the nervous system and reorients your vibration. Like water dripping onto stone, your repeated moments of observation are reshaping the architecture of your inner world. At first, it may feel like nothing's changing, but with each pause, you are reclaiming authorship of your timeline. With each choice to watch instead of react, you are tuning your frequency to a more coherent version of you. This is not just about peace. It's about power. Quiet, grounded, magnetic power. The kind that doesn't scream, but radiates. The kind that doesn't force, but draws everything toward it through resonance. When you live from the observer, your presence begins to do the speaking for you. Your energy shifts rooms. Your stillness becomes your strategy. You no longer need to convince the world of who you are. You simply be it, and others feel it. This is where manifestation begins. To transform, not from effort, but alignment. Not from striving, but from clarity. Because when you are anchored in awareness, you become a clear signal, no longer distorted by noise, no longer entangled in roles you've outgrown. You are not the fear. You are the one seeing the fear. You are not the doubt. You are the one who notices the doubt rise and gently lets it pass. Every moment you choose to observe, you are collapsing a different timeline. The version of you who repeats the old story fades. The version of you who writes a new one emerges. That is what this journey has been about. Not to fix you, not to change you, but to remind you of what you've always been beneath the noise. The witness, the chooser, the creator. And now, as this video draws to a close, I invite you to bring this awareness into your everyday world. Let these insights travel with you, into your conversations, your thoughts, your triggers, and your triumphs. Let this voice be a companion that reminds you gently, you are not your story. You're the storyteller. If this message stirred something deep inside you, let it become more than just a moment. Let it become momentum. Subscribe for weekly insights that support your expansion. Like this video if it resonated with your inner knowing. And in the comments, share your awakening moment. At one shift in perspective that changed everything. Your words might be the mirror that someone else needs to see their own light. You never know who might awaken from your truth. So let's grow this field of awareness together. Let's create a ripple of conscious presence that touches lives far beyond what we can measure. Because this isn't just a personal shift. This is how the collective evolves. One pause, one breath, one observer at a time. And remember this, always you're not here to control your thoughts. You're here to observe, to remember, to choose again and again, until choosing presence is no longer a choice, but your way of being. That is the embodiment. That is the quantum shift. And it starts with you.